I've come to love talking about and working on time management because it is something that we just can't get away from. If an agent's listening to this, if they want to make more money, the answer is actually time management. If they want more time back, the answer is time management.
Yeah.
Real estate professionals, welcome back to the RMG Agent Podcast. As always, you can find us on rmgagentpodcast.com for all of our additional content, which after today's episode, you're definitely going to want to go and check out one of the webinars that we did, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But before we get started, I want to introduce the illustrious, the incredible, the wonderful Jake Bartlett.
Illustrious is a new one for me.
We're working on new adjectives here.
New adjectives. Well, welcome back, guys. We are thrilled that you're here. This is actually episode 1 of season 2.
Yes.
It'll probably be numbered differently in the system, but it is the start of season 2 and we are jacked and ready to go.
Yes.
So, first, before we start the episode and talk about what that is, tell me about your hat.
Yes, GCU hat. My second son is going to GCU. He got a scholarship, and we had the opportunity to go and take a look at their campus. It was awesome. So went to the Lopes shop and got myself a super great hat. So it's going to be a frequent flyer on the podcast here.
Nice. Lopes.
Lopes. Antelopes.
Antelopes.
No, like this. I still got to work on the little.
You gotta.
Yeah, I'll fix that before our next episode.
Yeah, it's all above my college. Yeah, it was above my pay grade. Anyways, so we are jumping into this episode, which we are titling "Don't Waste What You Can't Get Back."
Yes.
Which is going to be our take on time management, right?
Yes.
Time management is maybe not the most ear-catching or eye-catching topic. Super important.
Yeah.
How do you think about time management, and maybe what's one way you think of time management different?
Yeah, I've come to love talking about and working on time management because it is something that we just can't get away from. You know, every human being, as long as you're alive, you get 24 hours a day. It's time is this great equalizer. And what I think is so powerful about time management is it has the ability to remove excuses, because when you realize that two people in the same industry doing the same job can make unbelievably different incomes with the exact same amount of time, it forces us to go back and take a look at time and say, what is this one person doing that this other person's not that causes this great disparity? And so when we can take a look at this and help agents understand what it looks like to do a great job controlling their time, then it just has all of these layers and all these repercussions, right? So the way that you control your time is the way that you control your life. Or another way of saying that is the way you spend your time is the way that you spend your life. And so if an agent's listening to this, if they want to make more money, the answer is actually time management. If they want more time back, the answer is time management.
Yeah.
So as you know, as little sex appeal as this has, this is an unbelievably foundational topic for growing your real estate business and growing your life.
So one of the things that makes me think of is we did an episode early on, and we talked about the 3 things that you get within your real estate career, and those
Yes.
being mindset, effort, and skill set.
Right.
So let's go through that briefly and then talk about where time management falls into that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we teach is we want to work from mental models, and it doesn't help to always be changing the mental model, especially when you have something that overlays multiple different topics. And so when we talk about controlling our time, when we talk about time management, whether you want more time or more money or both, we still have to take a look at these things, right? What is your mindset around your time specifically? When somebody wakes up, they have this mindset or this idea of what their time is worth. And what your time's worth ultimately causes you to act differently throughout the day. I had a moment, probably about 15 years ago. I was standing in a coffee line at a conference with a friend of mine, and we had just met with a mentor, and he was talking about, he asked us this question: do you know what your hourly rate is? And it's a different question for somebody who's in commission sales. Like, we don't necessarily think about what our hourly rate is. That's not a normal measurement. But we went through and we kind of figured out at that time in our business what our hourly rate was. And so we show up at the Starbucks line, and we're standing there in line. This line is long. And I look over at my buddy and I said, you know what? this coffee is going to cost me $250. And it was just this light bulb that went on. We actually walked away. We went out of the line and we just didn't even drink coffee, which I don't know if I'd make that same choice now. but it was so fresh in our minds that your mindset about what you're worth is just this beginning place for time management. Your effort, of course, speaks to what are you going to do about it? Are you actually going to make an effort to cause your time to be more valuable over time? And so we'll talk about that today. And then the other one is your skill set. You don't just wake up and get great at time management. In fact, it can take years and years and years and years to really hone your craft to be able to be a master of your calendar. And it's not about being a master of your calendar. Your calendar is a tool to help you master how you spend your life.
It makes me think of it being a doctor, right? They go to years and years and years and years of school. Right. And then you come in to get diagnosed for a sinus infection or something, right? You're going to spend 5 minutes with the doctor, but they've leveraged the whole process through the time management of when you walk in the door, you talk to one person, you go to the next person, you talk to the nurse, and then ultimately you get to spend 5-10 minutes with the actual doctor. But they've leveraged the rest of it. They could theoretically check you in at the door.
Absolutely.
They could take you back, weigh you, do all the stuff the nurses do, and then diagnose you, and then move on to the next person. But they've been able to build their systems around their time management such that they can see, 7-8 clients in an hour opposed to just the one if they did all of it.
Yeah, and so then we look at that and we say, okay, so how do we take that great example and how do we apply it to commission salespeople, specifically real estate professionals? And when it comes to mindset, I think the first thing that we have to go back to, and it's not a new thing, is not everything matters equally. And so if I'm going to get clear on what my time's worth, and I want to get clear on what the most valuable thing is that I can do with my time, I have to be able to work through my limiting beliefs. I have to be willing to work through some of the conversation in my head of like, well, I'm the only one that can do that. If you're the only one that can do $15 an hour work, okay, one is not true, but number two, that's going to significantly limit your income potential. And if you say, well, I don't really care about my income potential, first of all, maybe that's true, but maybe that's just like some limitations between your ears. But the second piece of that is if it's not going to limit your income potential is fine. It is going to limit the amount of time available to you to do other things that are important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it comes down to if you want to have that myth of work-life balance too, right? Like you can do all that stuff and do all of the lead generation and do all of it, at a 10, but not have the time management schedule, and you're going to give up the time with your family.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So you can cheat your way to accomplishing big financial goals, right? But the whole idea of being what I would say a successful real estate professional is being successful because you're making the money you want to make and you're building the business and having the career you want to have, without sacrificing for a long period of time things that are more important, right? So in our industry, it's not abnormal to see somebody who looks up one day and they have a big bank account and they're 3 times divorced and none of their kids talk to them, right? That was my introduction to real estate. Mm-hmm. And so in my mind, I was like, that's not success, that's not a plan for my life. So that's when I started looking at time management as a skill set that I needed to develop.
So we're going to jump into, maybe a mini model on how to think about this, right? So we've got 3 steps: planning, acting, and auditing. Planning, acting, and auditing,
right? So we want to keep this simple because when somebody first starts really, truly trying to do a good job with their time management, it can be massively overwhelming. But we want to just give some framework for how to think about this. And the first piece of framework is planning. One of the pieces of feedback that I've gotten in the past from people who start going down this road of time management is it feels like they spend all of their time trying to manage their time, right? Yeah. And of course, that's not true. It just feels that way. When you go from spending 0 minutes to maybe an hour or 2 hours a week, it feels like all you're doing is doing that, but it's not true. You're investing an hour or 2 a week to dictate that the other 40, 50, 60 hours of productive activity are under your command, right? So that's really what we're talking about. And so when we start talking about planning our time management, we start with the end in mind. We start with a longer term goal. And so we want people to go back and watch our webinar about business planning, because we want people who watch this to start thinking 3 years out, and then to start doing their business planning 3 months out, right? So your planning causes you to not do the tactical time management in the wrong direction, right? So if you're in a forest and you have blinders on and you're looking down, it's actually impossible to walk in a straight line or just stay on a direction. You actually will just walk in circles and circles. And so people who time manage without a long-term vision run the risk of doing an excellent job going in the wrong direction, or an excellent job going in circles, right? They feel like that busyness, like they're doing something productive. So we want to start with that 3-year and that 3-month planning, right? That drops down to 1-month planning. But for this conversation, I want to focus on some of the shorter term pieces, because they can go and watch the webinar and get some good information about that. When we talk about planning for our tactical, like calendar management and time management, there's really 2 things that I think are really, really helpful for agents to start adopting as their habits. And the first one is to take a look at the entire upcoming week, right, at a glance. And it does a few things for you. If you think about maybe like a professional football team, when they get done with one game, they have another game that's approximately a week down the road, right? Now, they don't know all of the tactics and all the specific things that are going to show up when we get closer to that game, but they do have this general idea of who they're going to be facing and what are the obstacles that are going to show up, right? Is this a running team? Is this a throwing team? Do they have a great defense? They're going to have some general concept, so that way when they show up next Sunday, they're not totally taken off guard by what the other team's doing. We have this same ability, and this was one of the biggest breakthroughs for me when it came to time management, is I have a dedicated time on Sunday evenings where it feels like the world just kind of shuts down and hushes a bit. And when I look at my whole next week, it blows my mind how many things used to surprise me that I realized should never have been a surprise.
Right.
I'll give you an example. When's the last time that you've been surprised by your anniversary or your wife's birthday? You don't have to answer these, by the way. Or Valentine's Day, right? Yeah. Like these dates are like, they are every single year, they're exactly the same. They're never a surprise, but how many times have we been caught off guard and be like, oh shoot, tomorrow's like this big date.
Yeah.
Okay. That comes not just with those kind of big things, but that's a sign of what happens on our work week. This next week, I know that I have 2 problem clients that at this point in their transaction are most likely going to show up in this way. So I get to Wednesday and that happens. I'm either completely prepared emotionally and skill set wise to navigate that, or I just get caught off guard by this thing. I tell everybody, oh my gosh, this thing hit me out of the blue. I had no idea this was coming up. Okay, you did if you would have just stopped for an hour, right?
Yeah. And you could have taken that time on Sunday knowing this is coming and put an hour in your calendar in the afternoon such that you could deal with it, opposed to the other way, which is it blows up when you were doing something else and now you went away from what you were doing to deal with this, and you come back and you never really get back into that process, right? Like you're never fully back to that because you got interrupted. Yeah,
it's so hard to control your time when you're back on your heels. And so I found that the weekly looking forward planning is a really great way of me just being able to say, take a look at Monday, take a look at Tuesday, take a look at Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and just really get an idea of what ideally does this week look like? What are the landmines in this week? And that actually erased like 80% of my surprises each week.
Yeah, I took a class from some really smart person 6 years ago that told us to do that, and then me and my wife have done that pretty much every Sunday since then. And that was your class. That was the first time I met you, actually. So it has worked for me. It's worked for me and my wife. We know what's happening every week. We sit down and we spend 30 minutes and we discuss what we've got. We've got 3 kids, so knowing who's doing pickups and drop-offs and basketball games and all of that stuff, like we know what to expect that week.
Yeah, and it's amazing because none of that stuff gets necessarily easier, but man, every once in a while, it's pretty rare, but every once in a while I have one of those weeks and I haven't thought through or planned it through and I'm on my heels, and instantly, like any kid movement, all of it's just absolute chaos, and and you're reeling. And so because I'm thinking about that, I'm not thinking about being productive, and it really has a way of throwing you off. But for a lot of people, they live in being thrown off. They've just learned to adapt. The issue is that the effectiveness of their time is now compromised and they don't know it.
All right, so we're gonna jump into acting into the time management and getting really purposeful on that.
Yeah. So now when we start acting, the way that I encourage people to do it, it kind of starts to bridge this gap between planning and acting, and that is, what does your morning look like? Right? So having some sort of a morning routine, the way that I think about this is I need to prepare my body, my soul, and my spirit for the day. And if I do those three things every morning, then I'm emotionally, mentally ready for the day. So if I do that, I do devotionals and I do those things and I set that, the last thing that I do inside of whatever morning routine I have is to stop and take a look at my calendar for the day. So similar to the 1 week, now I have a little more zoomed in view because I'm thinking about Monday specifically, or I'm thinking about Tuesday specifically. So when I do that, now I actually start making changes to my calendar and I start really, really thinking through my day. Once I do that, now I'm clearly into taking action mode, right? And the action that we need to take around our calendar is actually very simple, which is follow your calendar.
Yep.
Right? It's that simple. It's just not easy to do, because learning how to follow a calendar falls into the world of building new habits, and building new habits are unbelievably frustrating, right? It's going to take you the better part of 2 months or more to get from just pure discipline to the point of habit to where this is now freedom, because for a while it's just going to feel like another thing on top of other things.
Mm-hmm. And the discipline comes from when something pops up, which it inevitably does, and you're doing something. It's usually during lead generation time, and it feels like, I'll just go do it. It'll take me 10 minutes, right?
Yes. Yep.
But that 10 minutes could theoretically cost you, hundreds of dollars.
Right.
Lead generation time is $500 an hour, right? And it takes you about 45 minutes to an hour to get full flow, get everything. So you go away from 10 minutes, you probably just cost yourself $500.
Yes. Yeah, it's just that fast. It happens. It's so easy to do. So now once I start, following my calendar, I have a few rules that I need to abide by just to make this simple. The first rule is kind of in line with what you said, and that's not to mix types of time. And it's something that we'll talk about actually coming up in May. We're going to do the 3-day rule as a webinar, so that way we can take this and really flesh it out and help people really understand the full picture of what it looks like to control their time. And really the goal is to take 6 days worth of work and to push it down into 3 days, right? Which is a model that I've used over and over and over in my life, right? So once I get this really, really potent 3 days, now I can add days, and now I can make those more potent, and so on and so forth. But we have two different types of time, which are manager time and maker time. And just for the sake of this podcast, maker time is the time that we make or we create or we generate, right? So for an artist, it's time to paint. For an author, it's time to write. For a real estate professional, it's time to lead generate, right? These types of time, this maker time, it's measured in 3-hour blocks, right? And that's not just for our industry, that's actually across technology, programmers, coders, they have this same kind of principle. And that is, I need to go deep, deep, deep down this well and be uninterrupted for a period of time. Manager time is either I'm meeting with people, right? Or as a real estate professional, I'm meeting with people to help them buy or sell real estate. And so this is like the practical execution of the outcome of my maker time. But where we get messed up is when we get these two times overlapping and confused and we kind of break them apart and mismanage them. Now all of a sudden our whole time net starts to get ripped. So that's a problem. So the second thing is to not treat every day the same. This is something I've learned through coaching people, is when somebody starts time management, a lot of times they try to build an ideal day and they copy and paste that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? The issue is every day has its own rhythm and its own unique kind of factors, right? Mondays tend to be a day where there's a lot of distractions that come up out of the weekend, right? Tuesdays are different. Wednesdays are different still. Thursday, right? So we go down this road. So when people start their time management kind of journey, I encourage them to take a look and plan each ideal day instead of trying to plan an ideal week at a time, right? And then the third one is that It's kind of like the person who decides to start going to the gym for the first time in a while, and they're 8 days a week, 4 in the morning is their plan. Don't do that with your time management. All you really need to do is to plan and structure and calendar your priority, right? If you have a day and you only have 3 or 4 hours of structured time and the rest of the day is open, that's okay. The goal is not to fill 8 or 10 hours with structure. You won't follow it. And as soon as you teach yourself not to follow it, you'll start following out of the habit.
Okay, one other thing here that we need to talk about is auditing your time.
Yes.
So auditing goes the opposite direction of planning, right?
Right.
You're going back and looking at the past and how you did. And I would argue that most people, if we took a look at their calendars and went back 2 months and looked at what they did and was actually in their calendars, it would not look like they made a priority of those things that push the business forward.
Yes. Yeah, auditing is so important because what we feel and what actually happened are very frequently different. And so when somebody feels like they have a productive week, if you go back and you can't see the productive week, that's problematic. And it's the opposite too. Some people feel like they got beat up and they had a horrible, unproductive week, and you go back and you look and you say, actually, no, you had a very productive week. You just dealt with some really hard things. Keep going. Yeah. So we want to audit our time, and we use a tool that we'll talk about in the webinar to be able to track and to be able to go back and look at our use of time. But just for the sake of people getting started, when you sit down with yourself on Sunday, take a look at the prior week and just say, okay, what did I do? Like, here's what my calendar said I did. Did I do those things? And if you didn't, make the changes for the upcoming week.
Okay, so we talked about quite a few things for time management, had a few different models there, the planning, acting, auditing. We went back and talked about mindset, effort, skill set, and we have a webinar,
Yes.
the 3-day rule coming up in May.
Yep.
So check out that. That was the class that I referenced that I saw you in six years ago. And it's been a foundational aspect of me and my wife's life since then, and it's been really important. So please check that out. And as always, we are here to impact, empower, and encourage you in everything that you do.
Look forward to you guys taking action on this, guys. This is just information. This is just entertainment if you don't choose to do something with it. So I'm encouraged to ask you guys to be on the webinar in May, and we'll see you in the next episode.